Manali, nestled in the heart of the majestic Himalayan mountains, is a village that seems untouched by time. Surrounded by towering peaks and lush green valleys, it is a place where life moves slowly, guided by the rhythms of nature and tradition. The villagers, humble and hard-working, have lived the same way for generations, tending to their crops, raising their livestock, and keeping the customs that have long defined their way of life. Manali is beautiful in its simplicity, a peaceful haven where the outside world feels like a distant dream. Among the villagers, Diviya stands out like a rare flower in the wild. She is not only the most beautiful woman in the village, with her striking features and graceful demeanor, but also admired for her kind nature and devotion to her family. Since childhood, Diviya's beauty has been the talk of the village, attracting the attention of many eligible suitors. But despite the admiration she receives, Diviya's life is far from perfect. Her marriage to Rohit, the son of a wealthy and influential family in the region, was arranged by her parents to ensure financial stability. For Diviya's family, the union promised security and comfort, elevating their status in the community. Rohit, though respected for his wealth and family name, lacked the emotional depth and intelligence Diviya longed for. He was a simple man, content with the routine of village life, while Diviya's heart yearned for something more. At first, Diviya played her role as the dutiful wife, with grace. She managed the household, attended to her husband's needs, and fulfilled her responsibilities as expected. But as time passed, a deep sense of dissatisfaction began to grow within her. The excitement she once imagined marriage would bring was nowhere to be found. Rohit, despite his devotion, could not offer her the companionship or understanding she craved. Diviya felt stifled, trapped in a life that, while comfortable, was devoid of passion and joy. As the days in Manali passed quietly, Diviya found herself dreaming of an escape, a life beyond the mountains, free from the constraints of her arranged marriage and the monotony of village customs. Little did she know that her longing for freedom would soon lead her down a dangerous path, one that would change her life from the village forever. The winds of change blew into Manali one fateful spring, bringing with them a group of volunteer medical workers from Delhi. The villagers, always eager for news and contact from the outside world, welcomed the team with open arms. Among them was Karan, a young, confident paramedic, whose arrival would soon ignite a fire in the heart of Diviya, fire that would consume her entire existence. Karan stood out from the rest of the team. Unlike the other doctors and nurses, who kept to their tasks with a sense of duty, Karan was charismatic and playful, engaging the villagers with his easy charm. He had a way of making people feel comfortable, his casual banter and friendly smile earning him the affection of many, especially the women. His dark, intelligent eyes held a spark of mischief, and his broad shoulders and confident gait gave him an air of someone who was not bound by the strict moral codes of the village. From the first day Karan arrived in Manali, Diviya felt something stir inside her. Watching him from a distance, as he worked tirelessly with the other villagers, she was captivated by the way he carried himself, so different from the men she had known her entire life. Rohit, her husband, though kind, was predictable and dull. Karan was the opposite, a man from the city, full of stories and experiences that were foreign and thrilling to her. Their first encounter happened by chance. Diviya had brought her mother-in-law to the community center, where the medical team was offering free checkups. Karan was there, giving instructions to the patients and explaining how to take their medicine. His eyes met Diviya's across the room, and something passed between them, an unspoken connection that neither could deny. Karan smiled, a small, knowing smile. As if he could sense the longing in Diviya's heart, the desire for something more than the life she was trapped in. From that moment, Diviya found herself drawn to Karan in ways she couldn't explain. She would make excuses to visit the community center, bringing food for the medical team or fetching water from the well nearby, just to catch a glimpse of him. And Karan, sensing her attraction, began to respond in subtle ways, holding her gaze a little too long, brushing her hand as he handed her medicine, offering small compliments that left her heart racing. It wasn't long before their innocent interactions turned into something more. Karan, with his experience in short-lived romances, quickly saw the opportunity in Diviya's longing eyes. He was used to affairs, brief, passionate encounters that never lasted beyond the thrill of the moment. To him, Diviya was just another conquest, a beautiful distraction during his time in the village. But to Diviya, Karan represented freedom, chance to escape the suffocating life she had been living. They began meeting in secret, away from the prying eyes of the village. At first, it was only stolen moments, quick glances, brief touches, but soon, their desire for each other became too strong to ignore. Karan's charm and Diviya's need for connection pulled them together. And before long, they were caught in a whirlwind of passion that neither could control. The nights in Manali, usually peaceful and quiet, became electric with the intensity of Diviya and Karan's forbidden affair. They met in secluded places behind the tall trees of the forest, by the trickling stream at the edge of the village, or in the shadowy corners of an old, abandoned house, hidden from sight. Each meeting was more intense than the last, as if the thrill of secrecy added fuel to the fire of their desire. In Karan's arms, Diviya felt alive for the first time in years. His touch was gentle yet firm, his words filled with promises of a life beyond the village, promises of adventure, excitement, and love. She had never felt this kind of passion before, not even in her wildest dreams. With Rohit, everything had been predictable and dull, but with Karan, every moment was thrilling. Every touch sent shivers down her spine. But with that passion came danger. Diviya knew that, if they were discovered, the consequences would be severe. Her marriage to Rohit, already fragile, would shatter. Her family, who had worked so hard to secure a good life for her, would be disgraced. And yet, she couldn't stop. Each time she and Karan met, it became harder to resist the pull of their affair. It was as if she had become addicted to the danger, the excitement, and the sense of freedom that Karan offered. Karan, for his part, was playing a dangerous game. He knew that their affair couldn't last. He had seen it before, in other villages, with other women. But he couldn't resist Diviya's beauty, her innocence, and the way she looked at him with such longing. To him, it was all part of the thrill. He wasn't bound by the same rules as the villagers. He was an outsider, someone who could come and go as he pleased, without having to worry about the consequences. And so, their affair continued, growing more intense and more dangerous with each passing day. The villagers, though unaware of the specifics, began to notice changes in Diviya. She was no longer the quiet, dutiful wife they had known. There was a light in her eyes, a newfound confidence in her step. Rumors began to spread, whispers of an illicit relationship, but no one dared to confront her directly. For Diviya, the affair was not just a physical escape, but an emotional one as well. In Karan she found someone who listened to her, who understood her frustrations and desires. She poured out her heart to him, telling him of the loneliness she felt in her marriage, the disappointment she had in her life, Karan, always the smooth talker, would listen with feigned interest, offering words of comfort and understanding, all the while knowing that this relationship would soon come to an end. But for Diviya, the thought of losing Karan was unbearable. She had fallen deeply in love with him, convinced that he was her only chance at happiness. She began to fantasize about leaving Rohit, about running away with Karan to the city, where they could start a new life together. She dreamed of a future where she could be free, where she could escape the stifling traditions of the village, and live the life she had always wanted. But as the affair intensified, so did the risks. The danger of being caught loomed over them like a dark cloud, and Diviya knew that their time was running out. Little did she know, the real danger was closer than she could have ever imagined. On the morning of June 23rd, the quiet village of Manali was shaken by a tragedy that no one had seen coming. Rohit, Diviya's husband, was found dead in his bed. His family had tried to wake him, but when he didn't respond, they quickly realized that something was terribly wrong. At first, everyone assumed that he had died of natural cause. Is perhaps a heart attack or a stroke? After all, Rohit had never been in the best of health, and his death, while sudden, didn't seem out of the ordinary. But as the day wore on, whispers began to spread through the village. Some of the women who had seen Rohit the night before remarked that he had been unusually quiet and withdrawn, as if something had been weighing on his mind. Others mentioned that they had seen Diviya acting strangely in the days leading up to Rohit's death, distant, preoccupied, and distracted. It wasn't long before the rumors reached the ears of the medical team, who were still in the village. Karan, along with the other doctors, was called in to examine Rohit's body. And what they found raised more questions than answers. There were signs that Rohit had been poisoned, subtle but unmistakable. His skin had taken on a strange pallor, and there were traces of an unknown substance in his blood. The discovery sent shockwaves through the village. Poison. In Manali, a place where trust and community were everything. The idea seemed unthinkable. But the evidence was there, and soon, the police were called in to investigate. The peaceful, quiet village was now the center of a murder inquiry, and no one knew who. As the investigation began, all eyes turned to Diviya. She had been acting strangely, and everyone knew that her marriage to Rohit had not been a happy one. The whispers grew louder. Had she poisoned her husband to be with Karan? Was she involved in some kind of plot to escape her life in the village? Diviya, terrified and alone, didn't know what to do. She knew that if the truth about her affair with Karan came out, she would be ruined. But the thought of being accused of murder was even worse. As the police questioned her, she did her best to maintain her composure, denying any involvement in Rohit's death. But as the days went on, the pressure mounted, and Diviya began to crack. As the investigation into Rohit's death deepened, Diviya began receiving cryptic, anonymous messages. At first, she dismissed them as cruel jokes. But the messages grew more persistent, warning her that Karan was not who he seemed. They hinted at dark secrets from his past, suggesting that she was being used, manipulated. The words sent chills down her spine. One evening, desperate to understand what was happening, Diviya confronted Karan. She demanded answers, accusing him of using her to get to Rohit's wealth. Karan, ever the smooth talker, brushed off her accusations with a cold laugh. He admitted that he enjoyed their affair but denied any deeper involvement in Rohit's death. However, there was something in his eyes, a flicker of indifference, that unsettled Diviya. For the first time, she saw Karan for who he truly was, a man who cared for no one but himself. Diviya's world began to unravel. She realized that she had been nothing more than a pawn in Karan's game. The stories she had believed, the future she had envisioned with him, they were all lies. Karan had never intended to be with her. He had seen an opportunity and taken advantage of her vulnerability, playing on her desires and frustrations. And then, the final blow came. The anonymous messages revealed the truth about Karan's past. He had been involved in similar affairs in other villages, each time targeting women with wealth or influence, only to disappear once he had gotten what he wanted. Diviya had been blind to the signs, too caught up in her own fantasies to see the truth. It was then that Diviya realized the full extent of her mistake. She had allowed herself to be swept away by Karan's charm, believing that he was her escape from the life she hated. But in reality, he had only led her deeper into a web of lies and deceit. And now, with Rohit dead, and the village turning against her, she was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Diviya knew that she couldn't let Karan get away with what he had done. She had been used, betrayed, and now Rohit was dead because of her foolishness. With the investigation closing in and the pressure mounting, she decided to confront Karan one last time. They met in the abandoned house where they had shared so many secret moments. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with the weight of their shared betrayal. Diviya, her voice shaking with anger, demanded to know the truth. Did Karan have anything to do with Rohit's death? Had he planned this all along? Karan, no longer interested in maintaining the facade, shrugged off her questions. He admitted that he had never loved her, that their affair had been nothing more than a diversion. He had enjoyed the thrill of their secret meetings, the danger of getting caught, but beyond that, he felt nothing for her. As for Rohit's death, he claimed to have no involvement, insisting that he had no idea how it had happened. Diviya was devastated. She had risked everything for this man, had thrown away her marriage, her reputation, and now, her life was in ruins. But Karan didn't care. His indifference only fueled her rage. In that moment, Diviya realized that she had been a fool to ever believe in him, to think that he could offer her the escape she so desperately wanted. The confrontation ended with Karan walking away, leaving Diviya alone in the darkness, her heart shattered. She had lost everything, and there was no turning back. Just when Diviya thought things couldn't get worse, the final twist of the knife came. As the police continued their investigation, new evidence came to light, evidence that pointed to someone else entirely. It wasn't Diviya who had poisoned Rohit, nor was it Karan. The true culprit was Karan's ex-wife, a woman Diviya had never met, but whose presence had loomed over the affair like a dark shadow. She had been following Karan for years, watching as he seduced and abandoned other women, each time leaving destruction in his wake. This time, she had decided to take matters into her own hands. She had followed Karan to Manali, watching from the shadows as he began his affair with Diviya. And when she saw how deeply Diviya had fallen for him, she devised a plan to frame Diviya for Rohit's murder, knowing that Karan would be dragged down with her. It was her final act of revenge against the man who had ruined her life. The anonymous messages had come from her, carefully crafted to lead Diviya down the path of destruction. And now, with the truth finally revealed, Diviya realized that she had been a pawn not only in Karan's game, but in his ex-wife's as well. In the end, justice was served, but not in the way Diviya had hoped. Karan's ex-wife disappeared before the police could catch her, leaving behind only the trail of destruction she had caused. Karan, though not directly implicated in Rohit's death, faced the wrath of the villagers and his colleagues. His reputation was in tatters, his career ruined. He left Manali in disgrace, never to return. As for Diviya, she was found guilty of complicity in Rohit's death. Though her sentence was lighter due to the mitigating circumstances of Karan's manipulation and the actions of his ex, she was sentenced to several years in prison, where she would have plenty of time to reflect on the choices that had led her to this point. The village of Manali, once peaceful and idyllic, was left reeling from the scandal. Diviya, once the pride of the community, had become a symbol of the dangers of blind passion and betrayal. Her story became a cautionary tale, whispered among the villagers, as a warning of what could happen when desire and deceit collided. As Diviya sat in her prison cell, she couldn't help but think back to the life she had once dreamed of. She had wanted freedom, adventure, love, but, in the end, all she had found was tragedy. And now, all she had left were the memories of a life that had slipped through her fingers like sand in the wind.